My conscience hath 1,000 several tongues, and every tongue brings in a several tale, and every tale condemns me for a villain. It is that thing we do not talk about, that in the deepest corner and the recesses of our mind and our soul and our being comes forth within our own passion to tell story. For there is no good without evil. It's the darkness that is the most fascinating aspect of what we do. It has the most depth. It has the most reach. It incorporates the most forethought. So here, this season on 21 Grams, we examine the part of the soul that we often try to bury or not talk about. They say that 21 grams is the weight of the soul. But what is the weight of sitting in darkness? This is what we aim to discover this season. Welcome to 21 Grams with your host, Joe Compton. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 21 Grams. We're back this season, and we're getting a little darker. So I had to make sure that another mainstay of this program who's been on 3 or 4 times with us over the years came on because I think she has probably some of the best villains I've ever seen created. And so it was a no-brainer to ask Lily to join us. So Lily, thank you for doing so, and tell everybody a little bit about yourself for people who don't know you.
Thank you so much. I love starting out with a compliment like that. Hi, everyone. If you don't know me, I am Lily Luchesi. I am a USA Today best-selling author of urban fantasy and paranormal mysteries. I also write dark romance as S.L. Sinclair and softer contemporary romance as Samantha Calcott. And I'm also the co-founder and owner of Partners in Crime Book Services, where I offer editing, formatting, and other things for indie authors and indie publishers.
Awesome. I am really interested to talk to you because there's certain aspects of creating the villain that are interesting in your writing, and the way that you construct the villain. There's often a lot of time where we spend with that person before we even know they're the villain. Is that kind of fair to say about your style? Do you kind of like to do that? Do you kind of like to set us up and then kind of, here you go, this is the evil that you're about to experience, or is it, is the evil inherent and you're just kind of hinting at it to kind of get us there?
I've done both, depending on the books. In the Paranormal Detective series, I kind of go in the middle of it for the first 3 books, because you do meet Fiona in the first book, but you don't really realize how big of a threat she's going to become. You kind of think, okay, that's been neutralized. That's weird. The way that it was weird, that's neutralized. We need to focus on Vincent. And then, she kind of grows. I did want people to not expect. And again, you're not fully expecting who the villain is when you get into Miranda's Rights. She keeps sneaking up on you for those first 3 books and growing in the level of evil that she desires.
And you have that series. And by the way, for everybody who's watching here and afterwards, I will be flashing QR codes above us. So as we're talking about certain things, like we're talking about the Paranormal Detective series, that is the QR code that you see above me. So if you are interested in what Lily writes when she's talking about it, you can click on that and go directly to the Amazon page that has those books, and you can get those books for yourselves. There's a level of malevolence too that goes along with your villainies. I find that even in Page Papillon, there is kind of this sense of just outerly worldly expressionism from these villains, right? And they kind of conjure things and then they have no remorse over it. Kind of idea. Talk a little bit about creating that aspect of it, because that's interesting to me. That's a level in which villainy has, been over time, but it's kind of changed in our landscape these days.
My main thing when I usually would write villains before the Page series, I wanted them to be very, very evil, but with a root cause, so that the reader can be like, oh, that could be anyone. That could be me. I could become this person. I could be corrupted this severely. But with Page, while in book 3 in Werewolf Warriors, there is that sort of villain, but you don't really get that sort of villain like in Daunting Darkness. And again, how you mentioned in the first question, these are people you're going to see because again, they're very, very typical format cozy mystery. So you're going to see these people not know who's a villain. So having to get that evil and then I had to hide it.
Mhm.
I had to kind of heighten that level of, yeah, the unrepentant darkness that comes and how easy it is to hide amongst, your everyday, whether they're monsters or humans, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. I'm writing book 4 now, and I am going to be deviating from that formula for the first time, where
Mm.
it's more of an unrepentant evil. But it is going to be one of the more relatable ones. It's probably going to be someone you'd more expect Angelica Cross to fight, but there is no Angelica Cross, technically. So Paige has to fight this serial killer who might not actually be evil at the same time.
Interesting. Yeah, so you are kind of mixing the nuanced new age kind of villainy into the way that you write a little bit.
Yes. I don't choose what I'm doing. Like I said, when I do develop the villains, I do want them to be that relatable.
Hmm.
In the Coven series, book 3, that one is a very, very relatable villain. I wrote it in 2017 with a lot of things that were going on socially in the world, in America specifically. So it was something that people could relate to. But I don't choose that. My villains, they are the villains. They decide what they want to do, who they are, and they're telling me. Because I've mentioned it on different Go Indie Now shows. Paranormal Detective series. Stakeout was supposed to be one book, and Angelica was my villain. She turned out to be the bad guy. Danny was the main character. She was the villain. She was worse than Vincent, and that was going to be the big reveal and the ending where darkness wins.
Hmm.
So the fact that I had a villain, I had my villain, I had her right there, and she was like, "Nope, I'm not the villain. Sorry, you're going to be writing 7 more books about me plus more." But then it had to hit me, she's not good. She's got a lot of darkness. She's tortured people. Like she's easily corruptible, as we also see in book 5. So as I'm knowing that while I'm writing, it's like, okay, so this is my hero. This is the good guy. What on earth do I have to do for my villains to be more evil than her? Like that was something I had to sit there and be like, these people have to be bad for everyone to see Angelica as the hero.
Yeah, for sure. And you don't mix words right away. Angelica does something really bad that kind of, you know, was like, wow, okay, so she's, if you read the blurb, you go, oh, okay, so she's supposed to be the one doing all the investigating and everything, but you know, there's some things that she does that are a little shady.
Oh, yes, yes. Even if, book 4, she has to survive with some of
Yeah.
the things she does. But it's like it's she's still shady about it. She is not forthcoming. She lies. She lies a lot. She's a very unreliable narrator.
I you know I'm interested in, do you, because you write, I mean, you don't write, you write in different genres, and you write in different pen names too in different genres. Does the genre dictate the villain for you, or are you more so likely to cater the villain toward the genre?
A little bit of both. With the S.L. Sinclair books, let's go with the Santini family because they have very clear villains in 1, 2, and 3.
Mm.
Um, I didn't realize who the villain was going to be in book 3 until I was at that point, and I
Mm.
realized, oh, it's not just a villain. There's, a gang, a group who's behind this. Whereas in books 1 and 2, the villains were much more genre specific. But at the same time, book two's villain, I did cater that to the genre, and you can actually see a tiny, tiny bit of similarity in Stakeout,
Hmm.
which is the Lily pen name, and The Family Secret, which is book 2 from the S.L. Sinclair. You can see a tiny bit of resemblance with how I structured that in a
Hmm.
family dynamic. But again, I don't always choose my villains, but I knew who this bad guy was going to be. This was one of the ones where I knew, I'm like, okay, this is who, Sasha and her men have to fight against and have to figure out who's killing all of their employees before they get killed.
Mm. That's interesting. I also curious because with Paige Papillon and it's a series, but it's a series basically where there's one mystery and then it goes into another mystery. But then you have like the Coven series and Paranormal Detective series and all the S.L. Sinclair series. They're all multiple books. So developing a villain is that an interesting challenge with Paige Papillon versus doing it over a period of, let's say, 3 or 4 books?
It was a bit of a challenge because, yeah, I had never done that before, and even in, 4 and 5, those are going to be their own villains,
Hmm.
and again, 5 is also gonna be one of those twisted villains where you're getting that empathy for the villain,
Hmm.
and 5 is actually going to bring a common thread together through all of the books. So again, you can read them all as standalones, but there's going to be a very common thread that you think about in book 1, and you're going to realize, oh, there is something a little wonky about this person in book 5, all this time later. And it's not the main villain, but connected to book 5's villain. But it's been fun trying to figure out, okay, how do I wrap this up neatly? How do I
Hmm.
give Paige, as they would say for TV, the villain of the week? How do I give this to her? And, book 3 actually did wanna go and stretch into another book, like, there was gonna be a lot more, and it's just it didn't fit the format, it didn't fit what the readers of the genre would expect. So there's a little bit more about the villains and about, Zeke's family and everything that maybe one day will get its own book, because it's very hard for me, yeah, to not continue. My brain likes to go, 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 go.
You've mentioned it too before that some of your villains and some of your characters from other series want to invade other series that you're writing. Uh, so how does that work? How do you? I mean, is there a point where there's just too much evil and you have to go? You know what? There's just too much evil going on around here.
Yeah, there is too much evil, there's too much danger, and it's going to hit that point in Page Book 4 because
Mm,
it's going to be very sad at some
mhm,
point, and it's going to hit that where Paige is going to be like, "I cannot handle all of this darkness anymore," and
mhm.
that's the attitude she's taking into book 5. Like, for me as the writer, no, I love it. The characters, they get sick of it. That's why, in the Paranormal Detective series between book 5 and 6, there's like a 75-year gap where
Mhm,
Angelica and Danny go off and they do, the things that they need to do, and it's rest. They
mhm.
needed the rest. There was too much evil. It's like, I'm done. I need a break. Give me this break. And then finally she's like, I miss stabbing things. I mean, the thing is with my evil, there's always gonna be more. There is
Yeah.
no defeating the evil. It's the same in, reality, a non-paranormal reality. There is no defeating the evil, you just gotta keep going.
Mhm,
So that's kind of why Angelica doesn't rest either. She knows that evil's out there. And that's, again, I have to do a balance between the hero and the villain. The same with
mhm.
Paige. Paige did not start out wanting to put criminals away. If you remember
Right.
in book 1, Paige just wanted to solve mysteries.
Yeah.
She likes putting puzzles together. And she winds up being like, okay, now I want to help people. And it's a character development that she gets as you go through. And you finally, in book 5, you're really going to see like her empathy come out a little bit more, which is empathy she had to grow into because she didn't have a lot of it. And that was her initial character. She wasn't supposed to. She was supposed to be very relatable, like to people like me who, like, I have a lot of empathy, but it depends on where it goes.
Yeah.
Being autistic myself and the way that my emotions feel, that was how hers were. And then as I'm writing her, it's like her empathy is developing the more bad guys she puts away, and it's like, okay, I need to help people now. I need to actually stop the evil. I need to care about stopping the evil.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting. I love that idea that evil continues to go on, but it is also at some point for the reader, you have to have a satisfaction point, right? You have to have that point where either good conquers or evil just overwhelms. I mean, and not always to be a happy ending, so to speak, but to be an ending of some sort, right? So balancing that must be an interesting juxtaposition, especially I would imagine, especially more so with paranormal detectives because there's layers, right?
Right.
Instead of page papillon, there's definition, and it's by its nature of its genre, there's definition, but there's also definition because Paige isn't the dark character that Angelica is, right? And
Right.
so, but and you're waiting for that moment when Angelica just crosses the line and never comes back. That's kind of how paranormal works, right? And so that having those layers, that must be interesting to kind of figure out, especially with 8 books, where they're going to end and how they're going to end, and they have to have a satisfying ending. Otherwise, we invested all this time as readers, and we're going to be disappointed. And when we're disappointed, we throw things at you like like George R. R. Martin. I mean, that's a perfect example of a fan base that is completely disappointed you
Yes.
know by an author because they haven't decided to end anything in a satisfactory way. So, was that something you struggle with, or is it something you thought about when you were creating where to go with each book?
I struggled greatly with ending it because again, it was gonna be a standalone, it got redone, okay, there's gonna be a book 2 and a 3. I knew 3 was going to come, I knew it was going to be, Fiona had her arc as a villain,
Hmm.
and it was going to be Angelica fighting. They're supposed to be on equal terms of power, and if when you read the fight scene between them in book 3, you really do see how there's a different power level and power scaling there, which is something I try not to do too much because I know people don't like it outside of anime, but we've talked before how anime inspires me quite a bit in
Right.
that structure, so it was gonna end with that power scaling and Angelica rising to that, and then I realized as it's ending, like, "Oh, wait, that's kind of a cliffhanger, that's not an ending, people are not." And then she told me more of her story, and I knew there was gonna be 5 books, but the ending of 5, it could have been a solid ending. Anyone who's reading the series, you guys are gonna go through, you're gonna read book 5, and you're gonna be like, "Oh, they could have stopped there," but it couldn't stop there because of the nature of Angelica's evil. There was a darkness in her that's always going to be there and always going to keep growing, and I didn't know how to stop it. And when I got to book 8, I finally figured out there's only one way to get rid of the evil in her. And book 8 was her perfect ending. Like, I'm not gonna say you'll never see her again, but it's not going to be a new story. I'm not gonna say you're never gonna see Angelica again. I would never say that. She would like she would leap off the pages and slit my throat. Like, let's be real. No one stops her.
Yeah.
But with book 8's ending, I knew it needed to be satisfactory, not just for the readers and not just for me, but I also knew it needed to be satisfactory for Angelica.
Yeah.
He deserved a
Yeah.
solid ending.
Otherwise, she would never leave you alone.
Right, yeah. No, she would not leave me alone, and I put her through so much. It's like she deserved a solid ending. She deserved the chance that she wanted centuries ago, the first time she met Danny when he was still Jonathan Price. That was the
Mhm.
ending she deserved because she fought these huge big bads. She stopped multiple different types of apocalypses. She fought her own family, which I mean that's of course book 1. Like
Mhm.
there's so much that she went through and I knew that everyone needed a very good solid ending, but that ending wouldn't have worked unless her propensity for evil was taken away. And it was very, very hard to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, and we won't spoil it for anybody who wants
No,
to read them. But
no.
uh, I I am curious too because S.L. Sinclair is kind of your freedom space. It's kind of where you explore who you are beyond just paranormals and the dark things that you love. There's a lot of more freedom sexually, interpretively. Is it different writing villains in that space when you're in that headspace than it is as Lily writing those villains, or is it very truly the same thing? It's just adding the spiciness to it.
It is kind of the same thing for me. I don't when it comes
Hmm.
to the bad guys and how they're searching for them, the limitation differences are the fact that they are all humans.
Hmm.
Like I don't have, a way in book 2, Sasha, I adore Sasha. She is so feisty. She is such a badass. When you anyone who reads the Family Firm book 1, you're going to see how strong she is. Like I have put that girl through the ringer since she was 14 and she is so strong and she is so cool. But there does come a point, she is a tiny girl.
Hmm.
She is young. She is trained in self-defense, but she's not trained. Like, she doesn't have, any good reflexes. She doesn't have vampire reflexes. She doesn't have years and years of training like Angelica did. She doesn't have magic like Harley does. So the way that she has to get out of things and what she has to do, it was very, very difficult for me to match her up against these villains because the villains are they're not necessarily just they're stronger, bigger, faster. It's just they're humans who have more propensity of evil and
Mhm,
less self-control. So it's very, very hard for her to fight them,
mhm,
especially when someone could have a connection to her that you're not going to see in a non-paranormal book or in a book that is not, borderline into the taboo area and the sexual area. There's different levels to how I match my hero with the
mhm,
villains. And also make sure that her men aren't always, saving her. I don't want a damsel in distress. I've never in my life written one. I'm never going to write one.
mhm.
But it again, how the villains get dealt with is actually what the biggest difference is. And it's not easy because I go through and I'll just pause in the middle of these scenes and I'll stare at my screen like, what do I do now? What do humans do?
I have to imagine too. Does the tabooness of it does that the sexual energy and everything like that, does that make it easier to make them more evil, or does that make it more difficult? Because with that kind of tabooness, there are lines, there are rules, and otherwise it's deviance instead, right? So and there are probably some people in these books that break those rules and go into the deviant
Yes,
structures,
yes.
but you know that in itself is probably a difficult thing to write. But just keeping towing that line and making sure that you stay within the line of rules and consent and all of that, I have to imagine there's got to be some kind of layering that the villainy goes through with that.
Well, the main thing in The Family Firm in the first book is DUBCON, which stands for dubious consent, which
Hmm.
is not non-consent. It is not sexual assault. And that is the main way that I differentiate the taboo, dark, anti-hero men that she's with, particularly one of them. His name is Tony, who he is my absolute favorite character. Of course, he's the most evil out of the three men. But I did have to show, okay, this is why he is the hero, even though he's done these very fucked up things that would probably get him into court if he was not a lawyer and this was not a book, versus the villain and what the villain does and how vile and how absolutely disgusting of a human being that is. Like there's a line that I would never let those three men cross that this villain in the first book absolutely has crossed. And I that's how I kind of set it up so the reader knows, yes, these men, particularly Tony, have done some pretty shady things. Some borderline illegal things, very taboo things, but they have never done it maliciously.
Hmm.
There is no malice behind their actions. And that it's that lack of malice and that lack of care
Hmm.
that I put towards the villain and show you, okay, this is malice. This is insane evil person. This is someone that you do not want to run into in a dark alley. Like the main difference is villain don't want to run into in a dark alley. The men, they will save you from the person in the dark alley. Even if you
Hmm.
don't think so. They would that's where I draw that line. I made sure in book 1 you knew that these men were never going to go into that evil, malicious assault territory. Even if there's dubious consent, even if there's alcohol involved, even if there's, whatever it is, somno, but any of these things, they're still never going to hurt you.
Hmm.
And I want to make the reader feel safe with them.
Do you worry about you being the villain in a lot of this, because what you write is very dark, and on a lot of it's a lot of occult aspects to it. There's a lot of, and even with Sinclair, there's a lot of tabooness to it. There is a stretch of very prominent sexual, I hate to say deviance because that's not the right word, but you know orientations and things of that nature. So, are you thinking about? Do you you know? I know you have an audience and they respect and love what you do, but do you think about when you're trying to get a wider audience for these things? Do you think about that aspect for yourself?
Dark romance has a much, much larger audience than it would look because we do sequester ourselves away in our own groups.
Mm-hmm.
I have twice in my life, I have actually had people in my face to face, tell me I was disgusting for what I wrote.
Oh.
One time they didn't actually know it was me because I don't always reveal my pen name to people who don't know. As L. Sinclair was a secret for a few years, I revealed who I was on Go Indie Now. That was the first time they actually revealed the pen name was with you because I was felt safe here and knew that I would not be judged, even
Mm-hmm.
if someone didn't understand it. But I do very much worry about the S.L. Sinclair stuff. Um, like, oh, this is gonna sound so mean. Okay, so with the occult stuff and with the dark stuff that I write as Lily, with the torture, with the murder, with the vampires, and even with the way that I've written angels and heaven and hell, the people who are going to judge me for that and who are going to not like the way that I do it, I honestly could not give less of a fuck about their opinion. I do worry about some of the opinions that I get for the S.L. Sinclair stuff because people don't understand fantasy because it is a fantasy. It might be
Mm-hmm.
contemporary, but it's a fantasy. None of this stuff's real. No one wants any of this stuff in real life. Like
Yeah.
my book Acts of Contrition is S.L. Sinclair. I do not want to go through what my main character went through at
Yeah.
all. But
Yeah.
the things that are done to her once she is taken and brought to the cult, they are derived from a BDSM fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
But so many people don't understand that this is just fake. It's role play. I'm writing out role play is what it is. But so
Mm-hmm.
many people don't, and I don't want to ever be accused of like, borderline criminal activity. I don't want people judging me for that or thinking that
Mm-hmm.
I support disgusting, disgusting shit in real life. I don't. This is all fantasy. This also most of it stems from BDSM lifestyle, which
Mm-hmm.
I am a part of in reality, and which people also still don't understand.
Yeah.
And my villains are also taken for S.L. Sinclair. They're taken right from the news. Like these are the type of villains that you find every day.
Yeah.
I don't have to get too creative with them, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's the rub. That's the hard part about it all. If you're getting confronted about that aspect of it, hey, I think the fingers need to start pointing the other direction then,
Hmm.
because there are people out there. I mean, we wouldn't write about these things unless we had some kind of basis of truth or example to put those into these things. I mean, these are not things that are coming from the dark recesses of our minds. They're coming from things that we experience and we absorb as people, right? So,
Right. Let's take Freaky Familiars, which is the Paige
hmm
Papillon book too. Those villains were inspired by animal traffickers and
hmm
people who, take and go hunting big game and, rhinoceros horns and elephant tusks and all of that. It was inspired by real life villains. And
yeah, I kept thinking of that Trump picture, Eric Trump picture, every time I was reading about it.
yes, yes, that and the owner of Jimmy John's. So I remember when
Yeah.
he made it, those are the two that were in my head when I was doing these villains.
Mm.
But the actual bad guy was nothing like them because they
Right.
aren't always like that. And that's the same with Fiona. A lot of people got on me when I was writing Fiona in the Paranormal Detective series. Oh, are you just jealous? You made her this tall, skinny blonde. I'm like, first of all, no, I know I'm attractive. I don't need to look like a tall, skinny blonde. Why would I be jealous of my own character? And two, I would based her on someone who in real life was a very, very horrible person and had these ideals and had this personality just like her and just so
Yeah.
happened to look like her. Like I I want to make these villains again, people that you can see or that you can become. They're a
Mm.
cautionary tale. Vincent in, book 1, he's a cautionary tale. They're all cautionary tales of the darkness that hides in humans.
hmm
Like, and some of it's so bad that I do have to make it come out in paranormal because to even think about it with people is vicious. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah. Yeah. And the crossing certain lines are tough to do sometimes if you have your own moral standards and your own ideas, right? So,
Yes.
I am curious too about, nowadays they always say, like, one of the things they say about villainy that is always apparent, that we always hear, right, is you want to make them the they want to you want to make them so they're in their own mind, they're in the right, they're in
Yes.
the truth of what they think is right and wrong. And you know when you go super dark, like Fiona is a great example of that. Or I mean, Angelica, you get glimpses of that ideal, but with Fiona, it's like she's right away. She's super dark, and you have to almost stay with it to kind of get that a little bit.
Yes.
Are you looking at are these characters telling you, hey, look, this is how I feel, kind of idea, or are you kind of coaxing that out of them to get to where you can have a relatable villain that maybe would people gravitate toward?
It depends on which one.
Mhm,
With Fiona, I kind of had to actually get it out through Angelica's memories. Fiona has never spoken to me as a character at all. It was all from Angelica's point of view. But
mhm.
I did know that one thing that
That
Fiona had
makes a lot of
told
sense.
one thing that Fiona had told Angelica and has said in the books is she believes that witches and magic users are the superior paranormal species and everyone else is scum and below them due to how
Yeah,
they're created. Because in my world, the witches were all blessed by Gaia
yeah.
and the others were either from Satan or dark magic or some. So she believes that witches, and that's how some of the villains in the Coven Princess, the main villain, he is the same. They are connected, and that's not a spoiler. People are going to know as soon as they're reading these books. It's all connected. It's all one big world. So for her, it was a little bit different. For most of the others, I knew right away. Yeah, they all thought that they were in the right. They thought that they
Mhm.
were doing the right thing, whether it was just the right thing for themselves individually, for the world, for their species, depending. Everyone thought they were doing the right thing. Everyone was the hero in their own story, which is
Mhm.
amusing because Angelica and Harley in the Coven series, they both have thought multiple times, am I the villain? While they're in the middle of saving people,
Yeah,
they're concerned, am I the villain? And that's another thing that I wanted to show a very different side of. The bad guys are never questioning that if they're right.
yeah,
The good guys always are. Like you,
yeah.
if
Yeah,
you're questioning yourself, then you are a good person.
there's a moral compass that they
Yes.
kind of that dings in their head a little bit, right? It kind of
Yes.
kind of like an alarm when you're waking up,
Yes.
right? You know, quickly on that too. I'm curious too, because in Page Papillon, you especially in the first book, you use a device that creates a red herring. So how do you reconcile that villainy? How do you make it? How do you cover it? So that it's not apparent, because we do, for a little while, there's just enough evidence that points to a certain person in the first book, especially. The second book, you do it a little bit too, but the first book is really stark in that respect. I mean,
Yes.
there is an actual pivotal scene that switches everything for Paige, and I won't spoil that, but there that moment, you really do, as a reader, question, okay, is she going to throw us a curveball here? Kind of. Is there, so how do you keep the villain under wraps? Was that a difficult process for you, or did you kind of find that was easier than you thought it might be?
It was very, very difficult. I went through rereading it multiple times before because my mother was my alpha reader. She got it first. I wrote those for her love of cozy mysteries. But before I
Yeah.
was even able to give it to her, I read through it 3 times. Like, did I screw up? Did I go too hard in one direction? Did I give a hint over who the actual villain is just a little bit too much?
Yeah.
And so I read through it and I did it well, but for me personally in my mind, no, 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 it was bad. It was really bad. And I was terrified. But also there is a reason why Paige had the thoughts that she did.
Hmm.
And that's gonna become apparent. Like there's more to as everyone's reading the books, you're going to realize there's more to everyone you meet in book 1
Mm-hmm.
than meets the eye. You learn a tiny bit more about Shayla in 2, and you're going to learn a lot more about her in 4, which
Mm-hmm.
I adore Shayla so much. I kind of wish she was the protagonist, but she's not. She's never talked to me. So, and in book 3, you find out more about Zeke and you realize he's more than. And so finally, the big mystery in book 5, you're going to find out, and it's going to tie back into book 1, and everything's going to be one big circle, and you're going to be like,
Nice.
oh, and it's not a spoiler because it's not a villain. It doesn't have to do with the villain. It
Yeah.
does have to do with the villain. Everything does.
Yeah.
Everything in each book has to connect to the villain. But like the thing that you're going to realize, this extra mystery, is not the villain. It's just, oh wait, there's been a thread this whole time. It's been knotted, it's been frayed, but it hasn't broken. And that's something that I knew immediately when I wrote the first book that I was doing. And it's very hard for me to go through. Now, one of my readers, T.H. Morris, he's a urban fantasy author as well. He guessed it. He guessed it. He's like, there's one thing you said. And I'm like, most people aren't going to get it. He's like, no, most people are not going to get it. But he guessed it. I'm like, yes. Thankfully, people who know, if you know, you know. I'm hoping you don't know. But it's also going to be, it's having the red herring, book 5 is also not going to have a red herring.
Mm-hmm.
There's just going to be, that's how long it's going to take to find anything out. And it's going to go more into a harder crime where,
Mm-hmm.
like, if you see a harder crime show, they know who it is more than halfway through, and let's figure out how to
Sure.
stop them. That's
Sure.
what book 5 is going to do. So book 5 is going to be the only book that doesn't have a red herring because there's going to
Mm-hmm.
be so much else going on. But I love my red herrings. Those are fun. Those are fun, even though they're very hard and they make me want to pull my hair out.
And again, I just want to mention that as you see, as we're talking over top of me, I've been switching them back and forth, but the QR codes relate directly to the books that we're talking about with Lily, and that one above me is the Page Papillon, and I have a feeling we're going to switch over here in a few minutes. But uh, there's I setting is an interesting aspect to the villainy too, because you have a love affair, and especially for the paranormal stuff, and even for I mean, I haven't read any of the S.L. Sinclair stuff, but I'm going to assume that you utilize the same idea of it being a modern setting, and being, it does knowing. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, knowing what you know about where you are, does that help the villainy, or does that make it more difficult?
It depends on the books. I think it helps the villainy in the S.L. Sinclair books. It does help. Um, in Acts of Contrition by S.L. Sinclair, I have it set near up northern Illinois where I live, which is about 2 hours outside of Chicago. And there's a lot of farmland, a lot of small towns, a lot of
Mm,
sequestered towns where, if a little religious cult comes and starts building things, nobody's going to think twice about it. So in that case, I definitely have the setting of near where I live, knowing all of this.
mm,
Whereas for most of the other books, including The Family Firm and its sequels, the setting and being in the city actually helps the heroes more than the villains,
mhm,
because the heroes need to know what neighborhoods they're in, where they could be hiding, what maps they should be looking at, what clues they should be looking for. In The Family Firm, Sasha gets taken at one point, lured away. She's not actually taken, she's lured in.
mhm,
And her men have to figure out, okay, where. So it's their knowledge of Chicago, of the neighborhoods, that actually is what's going to help them, as opposed to helping the villain. It's actually what screws the villain over a little bit.
and Paige utilizes like street corners and
Yes.
alleyways a lot in her pursuits
Yes,
too.
in
So
Chicago specifically, our streets between buildings, between apartments or businesses, we call them gangways. They're not alleys. Back alleys are more like parking lots, and then we do have
yeah,
our dumpsters there, but
so,
it's not, when you picture a Los Angeles alley or a New York alley, it's not Chicago alleys at all.
right.
It's clean, it's well lit. Like it's kind of shocking to a lot of people when they come here, because you hear a lot of things about Chicago thanks to certain people. But no, where so these gangways, you have to be a native to know how to navigate them and go through the buildings and go in between. And like, you're never hitting a main street. You can only get it on foot or on a bike for some of
Mhm.
these. and it's something that living in Chicago you have to know, and it makes it a lot of fun for me because I love my city. I may not live directly in there anymore. I love where I'm from. It's always going to be my favorite place in the world, and I want readers to love it too. And I think that's why I make it help the heroes in all of my books instead of helping the villains more, because again, I want people to love it as much as I do, because it can be a very magical place. And that's another reason I set, magical stories here. It
Yeah.
can be a magical place, and all of this stuff can be real. The John Hancock building could be hiding a bunch of vampires working for the FBI. Like, you don't know. It's already hiding some ghosts and nasty spirits anyway, depending on what you believe.
uh, I also find it funny that Angelica gets frustrated with the city from time to time too, even though she's been there, what, 200, 300 years, right? So it's like,
Yeah, by the
but
end of it, it's like 280 years, I think she's been there.
but
But
there's oftentimes when she's cursing about the city and getting upset about it, which is kind of funny too, which
I
is a
also take
Chicago
that
thing to do as well, I
it
think.
is a Chicago thing to do, and I also take it a little bit from me where, when I did live in Los Angeles, I enjoyed it there, but I
Uh-huh.
cursed about it a lot because, like, where I was born and raised is what I knew. She was born in, um, not Victorian, Regency England. She's
Hmm.
born in the Regency era, and she still kinda misses that sometimes. Like,
Sure.
that's where her core memories were formed. That, before you're, like, 10 years old, it's where everything gets formed. So, yeah, she gets very frustrated at the city, frustrated at the sound, the lights, the noise, the rabbit warrens of the gangways, the same things that I make Paige love. Yeah, she's like, "Can I please just go back to England?"
There's certain things about certain cities like I was mentioning to somebody yesterday about the Dodgers winning the World Series, how they had 2.5 million people crowding the streets, and those people all don't live in downtown Los Angeles. There's nobody
Right,
who lives in downtown Los
right.
Angeles. They all have to commute there, so they're all going to use the same 405 freeway that commuters
Yes.
on a daily basis use, and are stuck in hours of traffic already. Just imagine adding 2.5 million people on top of that, going on the same 405 freeway, going in the same direction. How bad as a commuter, like I would probably call in sick today if I was working in downtown Los Angeles, you
I
know?
think a lot of people actually did to do the celebrations, but the 2016 World Series, it was the same thing here. There were millions of people. All of them did not live within, Wrigleyville in
Yeah,
Chicago.
I can
They came
imagine.
from other parts of the city, other parts of the state. Some people who moved out of state came back just until the World Series ended. Even though we didn't win the World Series in Chicago, we were in Cleveland when it happened. Game 7
Mhm.
was Cleveland, but people still came here to celebrate. So that's actually one of the reasons that when Angelica could finally like do the running, and when she carries Danny and he gets sick, and I have her doing that because there is
Yeah.
no way in hell I could get them places in the Chicago traffic. No one is going on the Dan Ryan at 4:30 p.m. and making it to stop a murder. It's not happening. It's not. Especially with all the construction constantly. I was just going into the city the last time, and I'm waiting on the bus that I'm on, and it took over an extra hour because of the construction. And they've been doing construction for at least 20 plus years. I'm not kidding. So that's one of the plot devices I have, because the villains would win if Angelica
Yeah.
had to drive in Chicago.
The one thing I found fascinating about Chicago, I know we're getting off topic here a little bit, but how big the intersection is on a four-way stop. Like I've never seen an intersection that expanded before, right? It's like there's a
Right.
huge gap between where the line of where you drive through is versus there's like it's like almost like a it's almost like a dark space in between the lines, kind of idea.
Yes, yes, and that is for safety. That is done for safety for wide turns. We have a lot of semis that go
Hmm.
through here. Elgin is the area where a lot of them actually go, and I know that because we used to drive in that area. So it's for safety. It's all safety reasons. It's because of what our businesses are outside of the city that come into the city, and that's another reason in the Paranormal Detective series, everyone when Angelica does drive, she drives, and that is also very, very much a thing of Chicago. We
uh,
have the most knowledgeable drivers, but if you are from another part of the country that isn't Los Angeles, I'll leave you guys out of this. You guys scare us. I lived there for a while. You guys scare us. But anyone who comes from another place in Chicago, like, what is this driving? Like, they're freaked out a little bit, and it's like,
Yeah.
we know what we're doing. And that's why Angelica's like, I got my driver's license in the 1930s in Chicago, and I haven't needed a new one since.
That's awesome. Uh, I was gonna ask something too, and I just got off on a tangent about traffic. But uh, the other aspect of the setting that I think is unique in creating the villainy too, it you can utilize like the dark places to kind of let villains kind of roam a little bit more. Do you find that to be the case? Because Chicago has a lot of dark places.
Yes, and a lot of also abandoned buildings, abandoned apartment buildings. That hasn't always been the case, but between the early 2000s and now, market crashes, all the different,
Hmm.
money things. There's a lot of abandoned buildings. That's one of the ones that Fiona lives in. That was a real abandoned building. It had just gotten too expensive to upkeep in the real location with the statue and all. It's very pretty. I don't know. I actually don't know if it's been restored and people live there or not. Would
Hmm.
have to look that up now. But that is one of the reasons that it makes it so easy for the bad guys to hide out and to always
Hmm.
not be found. And I used up so many that eventually by book 7 they had to hide in another dimension because I've used up all of the others. But yeah, it does help. This is a great city for the evil to lurk and to fester and to blend in. You're not going to find it. There are too many places to look. Whether you're looking in the sewer system like Sean had to do in Never Again,
Hmm.
or whether you're looking, above ground. I mean, you're not going to know that you're finding someone who is leading every vampire, but she's in, a steel and glass high rise.
Hmm.
That's another thing I joke about in book 5. And one of my favorite jokes is because the villain, where they find out the villain lives, is like, here?
Hmm.
Here? This obvious of a place in this whole huge city, you live here? And that's a whole point of it because, yeah, Chicago has so many places to hide, but he chose the location they found.
All right, so I want to also talk about. I mean, you and I have had several conversations about music and how important it is to you, and the idea that you post playlists in your books as well and things of that nature. But I am curious, how does it shape the villainy for you? Are you utilizing certain different types of music, or are you kind of just kind of going with the flow of what you've already established in your playlist?
It depends on which book. Actually, I have a book I co-wrote with Faith Marlowe called Soul Syndicate, and that is actually what got us our USA Today titles. And that was one of the first times we put our playlists together with music
Mm-hmm.
specifically inspired by the villains and by
Mm-hmm.
the anti-heroes because there's good guys, there's bad guys, and there's in between in that book. So that was the first time that I chose music specifically for a villain. Most of my music choices either spur on action scenes or they are for the heroes, which I'm
Okay.
actually just realizing that now. Like I I listen to either very bright stuff or listen to very, very dark, gothic, creepy
Yeah.
stuff and loud stuff. And the dark and the evil stuff is always for my heroes. And that should say so much. That should say so much to people right now about what they're getting into when they get my books. Like,
Yeah.
and Harley's one of the ones who has eclectic music taste.
Mhm.
So in book 5, in The Coven Queen, when she's getting home and they're having to fake drive in a magical car because most magicians can't drive, they don't need to. And she has like Depeche Mode come on, which is a song from like 25 years before she was even born. So music taste does shape my heroes quite a bit. I mean, again, Sean, Never Again, he's a rock star.
Mhm.
He's a siren who decided to become a rock star, and that was entirely inspired by like early 2000s new metal.
Mhm. Do you? I'm curious if you also have the Samantha Calcott label uh, for the nicer aspect of life
Yes.
things. I often like when somebody talks to me about how they can't watch scary movies, that they have to, if they do watch one, they have to cleanse themselves with like a Disney animated film after that or kind of thing. Is that what Samantha Calcott is to you for these dark when you're writing these darker things? You go, you know what? I need to write a Samantha Calcott book right now because I got to get out of this headspace.
Initially, she was actually my BDSM pen name. I switched all of those books over to S.L.
Which
Sinclair so I
is
could keep
very
that.
ironic and funny.
Yes. So I started her, and the reason I started her was because I was stuck on the Coven series, book 3.
Mhm.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to write something different. I'd had a dream that inspired some of her Secret Master, which is now an S.L. Sinclair book, like I said. So that's how, but I realized I was doing S.L. Sinclair. I'm like, I'm going to move this over. And Samantha, yeah, she's going to be the bright spot. I don't, okay, you know how you just said people watch the dark stuff and have to cleanse themselves? I
Yeah.
write a Samantha Calcott Christmas novel, and then I have to go write some torture to cleanse myself. Yeah, I'm backwards. I'm very backwards. Like I miss the torture. I torture, sex, give me something. But again, those are some things that my mom had inspired because she and I, it was a tradition. Every year we would
Yeah.
sit down, unless we were asleep, the TV was always playing Hallmark Christmas romances, like my whole life. So that was just, and I just actually November 1st, 2 days ago, Snowflake Kisses just came out. It's
Hmm.
the latest Christmas anthology that I'm running, so it's available now, only until February 1st. Paperback and ebook. Yes, I'm going to shamelessly self promote because I love it. And music was actually that inspired the story in there too. The song is called "The First Snow." It's by a band called EXO,
Mm.
and it's one of the. It's actually in the story. The song's in the story itself. But yeah, she's my. I'm gonna have a little bit of fun, write something I'm not used to, but then I'm going back to torturing people.
I love that. That's a great. That's that's the quote of the season right there. uh, y- that's awesome. You have such a deep, rich history because of your mother with music, and then on top of that, for people who don't know you, you started very young writing, and you've been writing for quite a long time now. And I'm not trying to say you're old. I'm just saying you've been writing. You started very young, and it wasn't that long ago. But you know, is are you? I know you're different, and I know as you write more, you get different perspective, and you write differently, and especially the amount of things you expand upon where you go to the Samantha Calcott aspect, to the S.L. Sinclair aspect, and then go back into the Lily aspect. But do you do you look at like Paranormal Detective for is a good example because that's something you wrote really young. Do you look at that and go, yeah, I had something going on with the villains. I understood the darkness. Or is the darkness a lot different for you now? Do you know what I mean? Do you are you able to reconcile and quell it a little bit better now, or did that was that kind of the cleansing that you needed to kind of when you were younger get that angst out?
That's actually an excellent question. It's not something that I think about as much as I do my heroes, where
Hmm.
they're the ones that I sort of put this darkness into.
Hmm.
And then it's the villains they have to face. Facing, and this happens a lot with Angelica, facing the villains who are darker than her makes her face her own darkness.
Mm.
So that's sort of something that has changed as my stories have gone on. I mean, one of my last Samantha Calcott releases was Yijun, which is a pop star romance, and the demon that my main character has to face is very, very realistic and very, very different from any demon my past heroines have had to face.
Mm.
So it's not the evil of the villains that has changed, it's the darkness within the main characters that has changed.
Mm.
Like,
Interesting.
again, Paige is going to have to. Paige isn't good with change at all, and again, that's
Yeah.
a very common autistic trait that I have as
Yeah.
well. She's not good with change. So the things that she's going to have to deal with in the next 2 books are very, very large changes. So
Hmm.
she's the demons she's facing are all in her head. There's a villain out there to get. There are bad guys. There's murder going on. There's urgency, but there's something inside of her that's stopping. And the more I find out about myself and the more I grow, the different my hero's demons get that are inside and that the villains bring out in them. So it changes, but not in the way you were asking. But yes, the answer to that question in one word after I've been talking for a few minutes is yes.
Anita agrees with you, by the way. She says, "Me too. I need the darkness after the cozy stuff." Yeah, yeah.
I knew there was
You
a
all
reason
are
we got
wired a little
along.
differently than most people, so which is not a bad thing. I like it. But yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, at the end of the day, as we kind of wind down here a little bit, you know, do you feel like there'll come a time where the darkness will shift for you, or do you feel like are you hopeful that I don't know that I mean I don't think you're affected by how you write, right?
Right.
You're pretty compartmentalized, and you're pretty well adjusted with that aspect of it. But do you feel like there's a time when you look at darkness differently, or do you feel like it's all the way it is inherently going to be how you write from here on out?
I I've suffered because again, my characters also have different facets of me. I have suffered from depression, anxiety, darknesses, and suicidal ideation since I
Hmm.
was very, very young. I had my first panic attack when I was 7 years old. Find
Hmm.
out when I'm 26 that I'm actually autistic and ADHD, and
Hmm.
that's other things that added. So I always had a very specific darkness that my characters were able to. And again, Harley and Angelica are two of them who really, really faced that early on. And then after my mom being sick and my mom's passing, and because I write a lot about death, I have
Hmm.
always written a lot about death. I never saw death. I
Hmm.
never experienced it. My grandmother passed away. I was very young. I was 5 going on 6, so it wasn't something. I did have a friend of mine pass away. He did not live near me, so there weren't funerals, there was nothing. So the the death, the sickness, the everything I had to go through, it kind of hit me different with the darkness
Hmm.
and how that had to be purged out of me. And I think some of the things I've written since have been an emotional darkness instead of a physical darkness, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
It also has made me want to have a little bit more light in my dark because it's always going to be dark. Most of my Lily stuff, it's always going to be dark. Paige is the least dark out of everything I've written.
Hmm.
But like dealing with that grief and being in a place where it felt like there was no light, there was no color, there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. It was just a big empty void of knowing that feeling so personally. I
Hmm.
now want to ensure that my readers don't ever fall into that because again, I do write about some very dark things. There are torture scenes that people need to skip. There are even fight scenes that people need to skip. In the S.L. Sinclair books, there's a lot that people might need to skip that the villains do. Like it's if you don't like dark things, like I'm warning people now, don't touch the S.L. Sinclair stuff because it's you might need a palate cleanser, you might need holy water in your eyes, something. So when I'm writing something with that level of darkness, I want to make sure that there's always going to be something more the readers can take out and see. Doesn't matter how deep that darkness goes, there's a pinprick of light. And that pinprick that I always had a little bit, it's definitely grown a little bit more. So I can indulge that darkness, but also
Hmm.
remind the readers there's light.
Awesome. Well, Lily, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you about all this. I really appreciate you giving me the time to do so. Tell everybody where they can check out all of your stuff and follow you and if they need book services, tell everybody a little bit about that if you don't mind.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me again. Every time there is a new season, I always am so pleasantly surprised when you ask me on. So I sincerely appreciate it. Um, Again, for everyone, Lily Luchesi. If you like vampires, if you like witches, if you like magic, if you like crazy heroines who might be as evil as their villains, you can go check out all of my books. They're all on Amazon. They're all in KU. I also have some more things on lilyluchesi.com. You can also contact me there if you want signed books, which I love being able to do and send to readers. You can also find the dark romance S.L. Sinclair on slsinclairauthor.com, and that one will link to my shop as well. And it also gives you all of the trigger warnings because I want to make sure there's a safe place for everyone to know. Because someone might think of it as a trigger, you might think of it as a menu. We don't know. So again, you can find all of those books as well on Amazon in KU and on paperback. I also have a Kickstarter that is running for S.L. Sinclair for the omnibus for the Santini family trilogy. And you can find that all over my socials, Lily Luchesi or S.L. Sinclair. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I am on TikTok now as well.
Nice.
Starting up my TikTok. And finally, if you are an author, if you are new, if you are established, it doesn't matter, and you want to break into publishing, or if you are just looking to expand your network of service providers, I am a professional editor from developmental and structural all the way down to proofreading. I also do formatting and other various services as Partners in Crime Book Services. And again, anytime you need to reach me, the quickest way to do it is on Facebook, but all of my websites, I will get back to you.
Awesome. Well, everybody go check all of what Lily's doing out, and check out where I'm about to hyperspace over to another feed to do the late night news, which we'll do here in a few minutes. And thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll be back next week with another 21 grams. Until then, remember, that's always time to go indie now. Bye, everybody.